And there we go. Man, yeah, we're live right now in the Spanish channel, man. Well, stuff happens, and talking about the bug from a certain Asian country we can no longer mention, and a certain jab that goes along with it
That's
got
right.
me another strike. So isn't it amazing how you're not allowed to speak anymore? I mean, this is unbelievable. I didn't do anything silly or mention anything like conspiracy stuff or anything like that. It was just I just can't believe that even just talking about something that they don't want you mentioning, even if you don't break any of their rules, freedom is in jeopardy, man. That's quite clear. It
And
didn't
it's
used to be this way.
and it's AI doing it. I was
Mm,
just seeing today, I forget who it was, some influencer, no name person said
yeah.
he said he was banned, or that somebody else mentioned it because this guy was banned. He was banned
Mm.
for uh, not even being against the jab,
Yeah, no, just
but
talking
the
about it.
but talking about it in a way that
Yeah,
the AI wasn't sure. So
yeah.
just
I
use
think
that word too many times in a minute, and the boom, you're gone.
it is crazy because I knew. I mean, this already happened to us when we were live. Remember last time when we were doing it and we just got cut off the air. So knowing that, I was just mentioning some of the stuff that is in the mainstream media regarding some of the concerns and such. Even doing that got me. I think that they have like a standard for the more conservative right wing type of channels and another standard for the more left wing liberal type of channels, because I cannot, because I know that in a bunch of our channels they had the exact same conversations and they didn't get in any trouble. So I think at this point, because of the way I was talking and the words I said, I believe there's a double standard here for one channel and for the other. Same thing for stuff like racism. There's a channel, I don't remember which one it is, where there's a bunch of people talking about the video. If you guys want to look it up, it's called "What Are White People Good At?" And they
Yeah,
start they start with the most racist, disgusting rant I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, my God, if you replace that word, if you replace white with black, you would get a knock on your door. You would be thrown in prison for speaking like that. But these guys just rant with their crappy racism for 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't get pulled down.
yeah, and
I
well, we saw what happened with Project Veritas. This is one of the more important reporters around, anywhere in our country now. Uh, James O'Keefe, and he's just permanently banned. He's just permanently banned from from Twitter, and I'm not sure if he's on Facebook, but things are changing because more and more people are getting, they're forcing the rise of alternative social media.
yeah.
And even Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, he is putting a lot of money, millions of dollars of his own money into creating his own like Facebook, Twitter kind of a social media platform.
Yeah.
And he's saying that, it's going to be rock solid, all of his own servers, his own infrastructure, his own architecture, that he's not depending on any kind of there's no liberal element that can sabotage him by pulling out, the way that Parler got sabotaged because they were using Amazon servers.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is, even if you do that, Google can still ban you. You just don't show up. They just blacklist you and you're not going to be showing up. So you would have to use some very specific software and search engines. And so you're going to be maybe getting the 5% of the exposure you would otherwise get, maybe even less than that. So it's scary that this is all supported by the government themselves. This is all um, when they get these, and this is another conversation. Are these services? So do they have the right to restrict your First Amendment rights because it's a private business, or is it
Well,
a
they're
public
doing it.
service?
Whatever the legality of it,
Yeah,
if the Supreme Court maybe someday will address it, it doesn't matter. They're doing it. They
yeah,
got rid of the president of the United States.
yeah.
He can't even when
Banned.
somebody else interviews him, they won't allow the interview on left wing social media,
Yeah,
which is most of it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on Gab, I'm on Parlor. I don't really pay attention to comments on Parlor, but I
Mm.
post there just so I post so that I can spread links.
Yeah.
If somebody can post something and get 1,000 retweets, great. Or if you get 2 retweets,
Yeah.
great. It's all about amplifying the signal that we want to amplify.
Yeah.
So whether you have 10 followers or a million followers,
Mm.
when you see something that you wish everybody would see and you retweet it or you share it, you're doing what you can to boost our signal.
Yeah.
And doing it across different social platforms is really important too. Like I might see something on Free Republic, I posted on Gab, and I posted on Parlor. I was also on Minds and MeWe, but I was getting like no interaction there.
Yeah.
But Tim Pool, who's a huge
He's
vlogger,
huge. Yeah.
he's huge. He puts out like 3 or 4 like 20 or 30-minute shows a day, and he's very excited. I saw him on Twitter today. He's very excited about Minds. They have a token system where you are paid for sharing stuff. So it's like another way of monetizing videos.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a certain amount of presence to actually start getting any payback from that.
Right.
But it
Tim
is
Pool,
another way of monetizing.
I mean, for example, Tim Pool that you just mentioned, if it hadn't been for YouTube, I never would have seen any of his, because there's this double standard at the same time. I know I'm getting suggested stuff like Tim Pool, like Black Pigeon Speaks, all that stuff. I'm getting it suggested by the algorithm of YouTube. So YouTube knows what kind of thing I'm interested in, and it's going to be suggesting it to like-minded people as well. But they're always kind of keeping us like in the, with a foot on our neck, and not to be too doing too good, like with Steven Crowder that gets banned every couple of weeks or so. But they get back to it because of this. You have a lot of exposure here. Tim Pool, he posts here in YouTube like every single day, a couple times.
But there's other people that have been permanently banned
Yeah.
from YouTube, like Red Ice and Stefan Molyneux. I mean, it permanently banned. So you have to make the effort and go seek them out on BitChute or Rumble or wherever they are. I think BitChute is working fine now. It's more searchable. For a long time, you couldn't search it, and that's really important when you're looking for something specific. But BitChute's working very well now, as far as I'm concerned. But look, let's start talking about the riots, and we've got just on time. We have another mass shooting by a psycho. This kid that doesn't look like his mind is all there. Apparently, the one at the FedEx building. He was a big fan of My Little Pony.
He looked like Lanza, like the Lanza kid. He had like a somewhat of a vibe there.
He was fired from there. I think he's got something going on between his ears, or he did. But the last thing that he posted was something about he hopes to see some character from My Little Pony in heaven. Okay, I mean the cartoon.
Mental, a complete lunatic, a complete nutcase.
But he was able to acquire. Haven't seen the exact model, but it sounds like an AR platform. And even though the FBI had questioned him because his own parents had said that he was, a danger, that he wanted to commit suicide by cop, he was still able to purchase a AR. So you can bet that we're going to see some kind of tightening of background checks, which will be hard to fight at this point. It'll be very hard to oppose it. But it can, once it's in, it is easy to morph that into permission. You're going to have like some kind of doctor's bill of health that you're not crazy. And that can be very easily turned into, well, the doctors just won't give it to you. Because, you're a Republican, or you once belonged to some Oath Keepers or Proud Boys or something, and you're done. No guns for you.
Yeah, I have passed several times such tests, and there's a spectrum. For example, I get like a small spectrum of what's it, like psychosis, like something horrible like that. And I asked the doctor, the shrink, hey, this says that I'm crazy. And I was explained, we all have like a spectrum of, compulsive behavior or slightly obsessive here and there. So it's a spectrum. So that spectrum can be graded to whatever you want people to have or not. So, for example, I got passed, and someone else may not, because he's not fit. He's not getting those numbers. You can easily adjust those numbers so that pretty much no one gets a gun ever again.
And if the Democrats keep control, that's the way that it's going to go. But we already have 400 million guns. It's going to be pretty hard for them to get rid of it. Chuk Mong did a super chat, and he had a good comment. I wanted to mention his comment that some people, what they're doing now is they're just basically advertising their other video channels on YouTube. So to be safe, they'll only speak in code on YouTube about what the other channel the topic is.
Yeah.
And this is a good idea because, and you can even, for the time being, for now, you can put the link to another channel underneath of your, on your YouTube post. You can put a link where people can see the real thing. And Black Pigeon Speaks, he's a great videographer. What he does is he puts his videos out on BitChute and other platforms like a day ahead of YouTube. So he's trying to encourage people to migrate away from enemy territory. Right. And it's the analogy I always used is, there's this beautiful air-conditioned bus, but it's you're a prisoner on it, and you have to sit in the chair and not talk, and or you can get on the wild third world bus where you're free to talk. It might go off the mountain, or you have a goat sitting on your lap, but at least you can say any damn thing you want.
I read that comment. That's why I thanked him on the messages there, Chuck Munn, because he's actually right, and it's as you just said, it's a very good idea. So it would be great for me maybe to keep my channels here, while at the same time maybe try with BitChute, and especially the topics I know are going to be getting me flagged here. I could just mention them here, and you know what? If you're interested in this kind of thing, then just click on this. But I also know that people, if you don't make it super easy for them, you're going to be losing a few. But it's the only way, man, because here in YouTube, I think we're going to be seeing more and more of this. They're going to be choking us more and more, little by little, because it didn't used to be this way. We used to be able to talk about anything. I mean, you're just talking. You're not, especially things that you're not, promoting any criminal type of activity or horrible things like that. You're just expressing a different opinion that they don't want you to, and you're getting banned for that. So
I think that YouTube has a purpose, and for me, YouTube's purpose is everybody has posted content like a library. Yeah. If you want to fix your motorcycle engine, there's a guy showing you exactly step by step.
Yeah.
What screw to take out first, and if you want to do a gardening video, there's a guy showing you how to do anything in your garden. So no way can other platforms compete with this. A decade of intensely minute, detailed information on technical information.
Yeah.
But you can't. But politically, you got to go away from YouTube. You got to get on BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey.
Every once in a while, like that video from Bill Gates, a documentary, that was quite good, and I was surprised to find it here. So every once in a while you come across something neat. But yes, the more power you have in our platforms, that's going to be best for freedom, because concentration of power like this it's never good, and they're abusing it right now.
Yeah, and anyway, we're going to have some options, at least for the time being. And the worse that they treat us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the more people just migrate away from them. And Mike Lindell's platform is coming online tomorrow. You have to give a cell phone number, he says, as a way of keeping bots out.
Yeah. And
then the cell phone number, they don't use it or need it, but it's like assigning one person. Everything comes with some risk
costs. Everything has its pros and cons. And at the end of the day, a lot of this is doing business, and that's also understandable. But yeah, I think that as this is like one of those things that in life in general, the more you have your eggs in different baskets type of mentality, the better the better off you're gonna be. I'm getting some comments here from Spanish folks. They're dropping by, not understanding a thing.
Yeah, no entiendo nada.
That's
Facebook,
okay.
Facebook, Twitter. It translates in all languages. But anyway, we're I think on the verge of, if there's one more mass shooting,
Yeah.
if there's something on the level of like Las Vegas, and this type of a point in history seems to bring the psychos out.
Yeah.
People are motivated by a lot of things, and sometimes the motivations can even be on a subconscious level, like insects being drawn to the blue bug zapper light. The insect doesn't even understand it. They just fly into the light because it's at an instinctive level. And
Yeah.
most people, they attribute everything to greed, and sometimes maybe to a lust for power. But there's just a lust, I think, for notoriety. We're such a celebrity culture. Fame seems to be its own reward. And even people who die in the act of becoming famous, they make the decision to do something like the Las Vegas shooter. And we still don't know all the motivations and everything behind that. But some people that have a fairly meaningless life, they figure, I will be in the history book forever if I set the record for the most shootings.
Yeah, that is super interesting as well, because I mean there is an amount of shootings that's obviously something that it's noticeable, because I always think of guns for example in Latin America, where I mean, in Argentina, you had kids that took guns to school, and every once in a while there was like an accident because a kid drops a gun and accidentally fired. So it's not that they don't have access to it. They just choose not to go out rampant shooting. Why do you think that is? That compared and you're comparing it to, I'm not just talking about Argentina, but other countries as well, where across South America, Brazil, where kids could easily do something similar. Why do you think?
Well, I think that the societies are way sicker, I think, than they used to be. For one thing, there's often a comparison of, I think, a false comparison where people say, well, when the Second Amendment was written, they didn't have assault rifles, but that's really a false argument, because in that time, they did have things like a blunderbuss, which you could load up with,
or gunpowder, make a bomb with gunpowder.
But even
you could blow up like a.
But even if you just went to the church picnic with a blunderbuss, and it was like shooting 10 shotguns at once,
right?
And then when you compare that, there was no medical treatment, no germ theory, no antibiotics. Almost any kind of a wound that penetrated deeply could kill you or lead to an infected limb, and they would just automatically amputate and hope you even survived that. So if there weren't church picnic massacres with a blunderbuss, it's not because the technology doesn't exist. You can do the same thing with a blunderbuss in a flintlock society. They didn't do it because the society wasn't sick.
Right.
The people weren't driven crazy by what they're watching on media. And then the fact that now you have, I think, like half of women are having their children without a father. And this is especially terrible for the boys. God bless them when they're a widow or some situation like that. But when women just decide to have a baby, and especially go have a baby and go on welfare.
Or maybe just get a kid, but at the same time, and this we talked about so many times before, a woman that says, okay, I'm going to be having a kid, but I'm also going to be my own woman, and my own professional life is not going to be compromised, so I'm going to be out until 9 p.m. every single day. This kid's going to be raised by whatever is on TV that day. And no one is raising the kids. He hasn't got a father, and maybe he hasn't even got a mother either.
Yeah, this Adam Toledo, everybody is crying for the 13-year-old. It reminds me of these kids in like San Paulo and Rio.
He had a gun, right?
he had a gun, and it was he tossed it behind the fence,
Yeah.
and it was slide locked. He had fired it till it was empty, and then he tossed it behind the fence. Then he turned to put his hands up. Well, the cop didn't know that he had just chucked it. The cop has to make it. The cop sees him with the gun,
Yeah.
and the 13-year-old had been shooting at cars in traffic at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
What are the parents of that kid?
And he had just these are all not confirmed yet, but apparently he had just gotten a tattoo for the Latin Kings gang, which is like Crips and Bloods in Chicago, massive gang. And part of getting the tattoo is like being blooded or being proven. So he's just shooting at cars in traffic. Right. And then when he's shot, it's like, oh, how could you shoot a poor 13-year-old boy?
They're shooting our children. They're killing our children. Right. I mean, it is a level of hypocrisy as we haven't seen in a. I don't think we've ever seen this level of hypocrisy where you have a kid with a gun shooting randomly at people or at drivers, and he gets gunned down by police, and all of a sudden he's the victim. They know what they're doing. Same with the other guy, the one that got shot while, I mean, the police officer made a mistake with she thought she had a taser and shot him, but he had a search warrant on him, and he tried to escape the police. I mean, sure, there was a mistake made, but
it makes people have a lot more, people are much more willing to fight the police when they know that the cameras are rolling, and if anything wrong happens, they can sue the police. Or become famous like George Floyd. So it's a vicious circle where it's a downward spiral of action and reaction. And what it leads to is the police just saying, the hell with it, I won't go into that area. Yeah. I just won't go. And then there's basically no police. There's a comparison. I was reading on a blog, comparison to Iraq in around 2004. When we went into Iraq, and I mean, it's not an exact analogy, but when we went into Iraq, we essentially fired all of the Iraqi military and police because everybody in the Ba'ath Party, you're suddenly unemployed. Well, they were the police and the military. So that we created a situation of lawlessness. And the army was not looking at like revenge killings among neighbors. That was like law enforcement. Well, they got rid of all law enforcement. So crime went crazy and eventually spun into a civil war. But when you get rid of the police in America, it's also going to spin into a form of civil war. We were looking at this video from Stillwater, Minnesota, which is a suburb on the east side of Minneapolis. Just a nice little suburban neighborhood. And BLM is now marching out into these suburbs and marching on the street. And the guy who's trying to pass them and get to his house gets out of his vehicle, gets into a confrontation with them, like a shoving match between him and BLM, saying, get the hell out of the way, I'm trying to go home. The police show up and they arrest that one guy, not BLM. They let them keep marching in the street. But in the state of Florida, in my state, DeSantis has put out a bill, and I think it's going to go through legislature, and he'll sign it, which is like an anti-rioting bill. And part of it is that if people are illegally blocking the road, you're allowed to continue going forward. Yeah. That you just don't get to break the law and blockade roads. It could be a fire, it could be an EMT going to somebody's heart attack that can't make it, or a guy trying to get to a hospital with chest pains and he dies.
Or you have your kids, you have your kids alone, you're going back. I mean, this is crazy. People have to stop and let these bastards get away with it, abuse your freedom to move around as you wish. I mean, this is impossible to live with. And they're pushing for this violence, just going to these. What's the point of having that in a small suburb? It's precisely that sort of thing, pissing people off.
It's an intentional provocation. And yes, Old Red said, move to a small town in the country, join the local posse, build up trust in the community, and hunker down for CW2. So you can see even Stillwater, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, is not far enough out in the country because BLM is still marching right out there. A lot of people think that Civil War II will primarily occur in the suburbs because they won't go far into the country where they have no support. They can be sniped, they can be ambushed, and they won't be fighting in the urban core because they own the left owns the urban core already.
Well, they burn it so many times. How many times have they burned down? What is it like? Portland, Seattle. They're just like animals. Even their own communities.
And if you burn the stores in the urban core, where is the store you're going to go to loot? It's going to be in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Or even if there's no more supplying of stores, where do the people that are preppers have the food? The suburbs.
Yeah.
They can't get far out into the rural area because it's too easy for them to be ambushed. But they can just move a few miles in force in vehicles into a suburb to do, like right now, like blocking roads and just being, pains in the ass. But eventually this will change into like home invasions. It'll be like the People's Food Committee is collecting the food tax.
Yeah,
which
you
means
greedy
they're
bastard,
knocking on the doors and saying, you have to fill this shopping cart with food or you're going to get all your windows smashed.
Yeah. It is so interesting how the one of the owners of BLM, she bought like $3 million worth of real estate. Now that's that's not capitalism. That's just the people's home,
And this has always been the pattern. And she also had money offshore. So when these corporations are trying to appease the left, they're donating millions. It's just strengthening the left, allowing them to, I saw in these riots that are going on in Minnesota, they have the food trucks, free food.
Yeah.
Who's paying for the food truck?
There's a lot of money, man. There's a lot of money going in there. Even the heads of BLM, they're just puppets of something much more powerful behind all of this.
Yeah, I think that we're going to. I think this will happen during the Biden-Harris term for sure. I think that China was planning eventually to conquer Taiwan, maybe in 2030 or 2040. But when an opportunity comes along like this, where you have such a weak president, and you have spies all over the White House reporting that no way will he defend Taiwan.
They may jump on it, right?
They will jump on it. But to create the perfect condition for jumping on, whether it's Russia and Ukraine, or Iran versus Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, or China versus Taiwan, and China also taking territory in the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, the condition that is perfect for them is if America is already focused inward during its civil disorder. So creating a big fire inside of America is creating the perfect conditions where America will not be able to intervene around the world. So between the useful idiots and the actual communist fifth column, I think they're going to try to kick off a period of civil disorder this summer, even worse than last summer. So even with Trump gone, it's just America. They don't have to hate on Trump. They'll just hate on America because the brainwashing that they've been doing successfully now for years is America is systemically racist. That means you've got to pull down the statue of Lincoln and George Washington. Everything has to go.
Yeah.
And in this situation, it's going to lead to a civil war. And that situation in Stillwater, Minnesota, where the one guy that's a local gets arrested by the police, the lesson that people are going to learn from that is, I'm not getting out of my truck and going to walk up to, a mob of Antifa and try to, yell at them and push them out of the way. I'm going to drive 3 blocks away, get out my AR and take a shot from the bushes.
Yeah.
If the police aren't going to stop them, this is what happens. If the police aren't going to stop BLM, and what we've seen in Portland and other cities, they come through the suburbs with spotlights and bullhorns in the middle of the night, breaking windows. People are going to say, I'm not playing. If you call the police and the police say, you got a busy signal, or the police just say there's nothing we can do about it,
we can't show
people
up.
are going to do it themselves.
It's a mostly peaceful protest. So that argument of the peaceful protest. There was a woman that she was caught. She was like with her daughter or something like that, and she called the police, and the police told her we can't do a thing about it. We just cannot intervene, and they just left her hanging. She got lucky, but how long can you trust them getting lucky with these things?
Yeah, that was in Virginia last year, and we're seeing Florida right now is leading with this anti-riot law. If you get arrested during a riot, there's no bail until you've had your arraignment and your court date. So you're going to spend time in jail, not just like Portland. You get caught with a Molotov cocktail in your hand, burning the ICE building, and you go in front of a communist judge who gives you like a gold star and a free goodie bag and winks at you and says, you're gone. You're on the street. See you tomorrow. Yeah. This is a completely dysfunctional city where people caught in the middle of a riot are just released every night, same guy. In Florida, they're going to spend time in jail, and just being in a riot, once it's declared an unlawful assembly, is going to be some months in jail. And that will take some of the fun out of it.
There was this other guy. I don't know if you see it. If you saw this, a black guy in a hospital. He had a gun, and the security guard realizes he has a gun, and two of them try to take the gun away from him. He resists. He ends up getting shot, and he's not putting the gun down. The headline is another black man gets shot to death in the ER room.
Well, the mainstream media is part of this fifth column. It doesn't mean that every one of them is like a communist with a little statue of, a little Lenin's bust statue in like a little altar with a hammer and sickle flag. You have a lot of useful idiots that are just brainwashed, in the woke cult. But you do have a lot of people that are saying, hey, America has been an imperialist power for too long, and it's time to bring it down. And this is fitting perfectly with communist China's goals and the goals that Russia has. And I don't put Russia in the same category. Russia has a very small GDP compared to China, but it has fantastic weapon systems. It has artillery that is much better than our artillery, much better. If we tried to stop them in Ukraine, NATO would get creamed. It took us 3 months in Desert Storm, in Desert Shield, and then Desert Storm. It took us 3 months in a permissive environment where we can just bring in one ship after the other into Saudi Arabia to build up the forces to kick Iraq out of little Kuwait. If we try to stop Russia and Ukraine, we won't have 3 months.
No, it's being crushed.
We'll be crushed, and the Russians have an escalatory advantage all the way up until we say, that's it, we're going full nuclear, blow up the world. And that the Russians and the Chinese have spies in the White House that are reporting back verifiably, because they probably have lots of spies, that America will not try to, go against Russia or China. Because the same people in the White House, they're also sympathetic to the communists. Yeah. They're also sympathetic. So there's like a confluence of events happening where it's not going to be like World War II. They're replaying on some channels we get. It's a couple years old documentary series called The Pacific. And it follows these Marines and, island hopping in the Pacific. That America's gone.
Yeah.
There were tough Americans and tough Japanese, and they fought tough battles, with artillery, flamethrowers, machine guns, right across these islands. That America's gone. And you can't compare a really relatively tiny number of special forces, SEALs and Rangers and Army Special Forces. You can't. That tiny little percentage of our military is not what is going to be involved in a real war. In a real war, you need hundreds of thousands of infantry troops.
Yes.
Slugging it out week after week with artillery, mortars, machine guns. We don't have that anymore.
Russia is a lot tougher, is a lot more prepared mentally for that. They're a lot more united themselves. They don't have the division, right. This idea of I don't think that they're going to be messing with Russians in Ukraine. They're going to be leaving the Ukrainians to hang, and they're going to be having to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And
Old Red says Russia is more like a pack of hyenas, but they'll take what they can after China goes. But they'll all do this at the same time. China, Russia, and Iran will attack at the same time, like in the same month, because if would have a very hard time even stopping China only against Taiwan. And you can be sure the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal will be blocked. So anything in the Atlantic will have to take another 2 weeks to get to any wars, because those canals in World War II, the Germans and Japanese couldn't prevent those canals from being used. In the modern era, those canals are blocked the minute of hostilities. So everything has to go around Cape of, South America or Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
It has to. And we don't have that kind of troops anymore. In fact, I would bet that we will start seeing, if these kind of hostilities ramp up, we're going to see more accidents, collisions, fires due to incompetence, and we may even see something like a strike, especially on naval ships, because even if 10% of the crew decide to screw things up, if you have a radical woke leader on a Navy ship, and this is who we're recruiting. Remember, we're self-radicalizing. The bosses of our military have declared that they're woke. They're getting rid of the white extremists. They want the woke.
What was it that they said that they were going to be taking in like trans people? Was that announced at some point recently?
Not only taking them in, recruiting them and giving them surgery, which would come ahead of like some wounded warriors.
At your expense, they're going to be giving this idea of a sex. You cannot have a sex change. There's no such thing. It's not possible to change the gender of a person. All they're doing is like doing some horrible mutilation.
It's a horrible, and with a very high regret rate. And sometimes these people try to change back, and they've done one mutilation, then they try to so Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, was one of the first institutions to figure out how to do sex change. I mean, guys, listen to this. If you don't get grossed out easily, turn this off for a second.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
For going from male to female, they turn your ball sack inside out and put it inside of you. That's your, as a fake female. It's BS. Johns Hopkins quit doing it like 10 years ago because the regret rate was so high.
It's impossible. You cannot make a man into a woman. But we're in clown world, Matt. Right now, we're in clown world where you're supposed to go not like sex change, like a person. No, you cannot do that. All you can do is do some horrible mutilation where you get your testicles removed, your penis cut in half and folded inwards in some monstrosity out of a Frankenstein movie, for crying out loud. And someone going out the door and thinking he now has a female sex organ. It is not like that. It's nothing like that. It's just a monstrosity. And of course, people regret doing that kind of nonsense.
It's very sick. It's very sick that there are doctors that will go along with this illness. And the worst is when they'll do these chemical castration, puberty blocking drugs on children.
Kids that cannot decide what they're going to be having for dessert, man. Kids that they cannot be left alone for 5 minutes, yet they're going to be deciding, doing it should be considered female or male genital mutilation, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Yeah. Which I believe it's unconstitutional to do something like that to a kid. But we're in crazy world where all of this is now considered normal and progressive.
Yeah, and this is being noted by our enemies, because when a country goes mad, it's a perfect time to attack them. Just watch the movie. The documentary series, any parts of it, called The Pacific, and think, do you really believe that girls can do this? It's a meat grinder for men, like 20-year-old men, super strong, gung-ho, and half of them get killed trying to get across one side of the island to the other. And you think that 120-pound girls can do this while dragging, 100-pound machines and mortar bases and artillery shells? It's any country that would send its daughters, which is the next generation. The daughters are the future. It's like a deer herd. You can shoot all the bucks, and if there's one or two bucks around, all of the does will still manage to get pregnant, okay?
Yeah.
But if you start killing your young girls, you're a society that's suicidal.
No,
You're in.
no society has ever done that until no society has even ever considered doing anything like that until now.
And
But
this is why China and Russia are thinking we may be at the moment where
yeah,
America can just be blocked. America will be so focused inward on its own pathology that
yeah,
it's not going to be any way capable of stopping them in Taiwan or Ukraine or the Baltics or Iran versus the Gulf states or Israel. And
yeah,
when it happens, Fernando Sosa has made the comment a few times, it will happen all at the same time.
yeah.
America will be focused inward on civil disorder and possibly food chain disruptions, electricity disruptions. No way will we be
It's
then gearing up for
right.
like World War II. We
It's the
can't do that.
only
We're
it's
not
the
that
only
country.
the only logical thing would be for that to happen. Take advantage of the moment. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I would do that myself. I would take advantage of that
It's just
situation.
it's just
It's common
logical.
sense.
It's
Yeah,
common sense.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, it's common sense, and it's coming, and it's the culmination of this fifth column effort inside of America, and not only inside of America. Somebody upward asked you comment on Spanish. He called it
yeah,
Spainistan, and he said Spain is getting so woke. I think he
yeah.
he said he named some game that has now been banned in Spain because it's not woke enough. It,
I don't know
where
about
was that?
the game
It says
specifically, but
in Spainistan, Kim Strong Un said in Spainistan they banned Dragon Ball because it's not woke enough. I don't know what Dragon Ball is.
Dragon Ball is like like a Japanese a cartoon anime thing. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's it's sickening to see how we've reached this point. But it's very much pushed also by the mainstream media that they are either collaborating, either as true believers, or as we were talking before we went live, there's people that are scared of speaking out. And they just nod because they don't want to be losing. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to be fired, losing their pensions. So I think that maybe 80%, 70%, whatever percentage it is, there's just people scared of getting destroyed.
And
Uh,
one of the dynamics that kept the communist countries communist for so long, they had a system of like Stasi or KGB informants where they would test people like in a workplace or in a college classroom. The Stasi would go to somebody and say, I want we're ordering you to tell an anti-communist joke. And then we're ordering you to write down who laughs and who doesn't laugh and come and
right,
report on it. Okay? And
right.
if you refuse to do this, then you're marked down as not obeying orders. So you can see they had a very complex system for enforcing silence by people, like don't laugh. So if you
Yeah,
heard a anti-communist joke, you're afraid to laugh because you know somebody's might be taking notes. It might be a setup. So in a classroom, you just heard a great anti-communist joke. Nobody laughs. You're thinking it's pretty funny. You don't
yeah,
know out of the 30 or 40 people in the classroom, am I the only one that thought it was funny? Are the rest truly dedicated communists who don't laugh at that joke because they don't want to laugh at that joke? Or are they not laughing because they're afraid to laugh at the joke?
yeah,
Nobody can get together after the class and say, hey, did you hear that joke? Did you think it was funny? Everybody has to exist in their own little sphere, their own little bubble of safety, and pretend they didn't like the joke.
yeah,
Now, we don't have an overt Stasi in America in 2021. What we
yeah,
have,
yeah.
though, what we have is everybody with a smartphone in their pocket could record you.
Right.
So if you tell a joke, it can be on, social media later. This professor is a racist. He told a joke about Obama. He told a joke about some black congressman. He's a racist. So so it's a slightly different reason why people will remain silent in America compared to, say, communist Soviet Union or communist East Germany. But the effect is similar. People won't give their honest opinion on the woke culture because they're afraid if they say something, they could get fired. And they
But
certainly won't put it in an email or a text, because even years later, that email or text can
come back.
come back. And even if you're in a conversation with a friend, you don't know if the smartphone is recording you.
Yeah.
So the technology, in a way, is our Stasi. In the communist countries 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they had a system of informants, forced compliance with snitching on your friends, snitching on your coworkers. Now, this technology accomplishes much of that same goal, because you've seen so many people lose their career because of something they said, but it's recorded, and then it's put out publicly, and you're fired. So you don't know how many people are really woke and how many people are just afraid to be honest.
But it's even worse than that, because you're implying that you can shut up and not laugh at the joke, not say anything. Now, what we're being told right now from BLM is silence is compliance. You have to speak up and swear your loyalty
or even
to
worse,
the regime.
Even worse, it's now called silence is violence.
It's violence.
They've gone from sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. That's what we were when we were children. That's what we said. Sticks and stones. Now it became silence is compliance, and now it's silence is violence. Right. So if you're not out goose stepping with the woke BLM, you're some kind of a Nazi. You can't just sit passively on the sideline
and shut up.
When BLM. Yeah, in Stillwater, Minnesota, when BLM got into that beef and they arrested the local, they're yelling at people, stop staring at us, come and join us. You can't just be on the sideline. You have to join us. To show you're woke, you have to come out and join us.
Because it's not acceptable for you to have a different opinion and stand there and say, I don't agree with you. That's not allowed anymore. You're not allowed to say, I'm going to be standing here peacefully and not agree with you. Okay, that's not possible anymore, because you're a violent Nazi racist if you do that. You have to come here and start cheering along with me, because there's no acceptance of any other idea besides my own. There's no, and that is the root of communism, is we're all shouting the same thing out loud, and no one can disagree, and
it's essentially a religion. It's a secular religion, and God is the government. And you have to obey, and you have to take part. You can't be on the sideline. You have to come and march with them. Yeah. But what's going to happen is people that see examples like that Stillwater example, where the local resident is one arrested. BLM is like free to move down the street. But the one guy is arrested. People are watching that and saying, well, I'm not going to get out and confront BLM and get arrested. But I know I can make a 400-yard shot and they'll never catch me. That's what people are thinking. And I'm not condoning that. I'm just saying what I think is going to happen. And as far as China and Russia are concerned, when their war college staffs, when their war planners are discussing this, the more violent America becomes, the better. It's better if there's a right-wing reaction to BLM that goes into a civil war. Then, for sure, our military will not engage against Taiwan. Our military will be occupying Minneapolis and Chicago and D.C. Our military will be a home guard, keeping the peace on our city streets. No way will we gear up for, the Battle of Taiwan. It is never going to happen. The Chinese want this to happen.
But you don't have much of a choice, because they're not leaving you one. They're coming after you and saying either you come out and cheer with us, or we burn down your house. That's where we're going with all of this. So right now they're going into your neighborhoods 2, 3 a.m., loudspeakers breaking your windows, come out and show your support or else. And I mean, if it continues this way, you just don't have, there's always this idea that so as to have a fight, there has to be 2 people involved. Well, man, if they're coming after you, you just have no choice but to fight, because if not, you just get destroyed by them. They're not allowing you to just have a different opinion. They're not allowing you to just not get involved. That's the recipe for disasters. That's why I think it is going to be unavoidable, the CW2.
Yeah, and you have to look at this on different levels. There are BLM people who are right next to each other, are guys, and sometimes the same person say, I'm an anarchist and I'm a communist. This is
Yeah.
like, crazy. This is like saying I'm an atheist and I'm a Christian. The first thing when communists get in control is they tell the atheists, you get in line and put on the communist uniform or you get put against the wall and shot. We don't have time for people that don't believe in communism.
Right.
Yeah, you've got to wear the uniform and salute and march. So the anarchists are literally the biggest useful idiots. In the Spanish Civil War, always the anarchists helped to get things going by burning buildings and making the Molotov cocktails.
Man, they're lazy and stupid. I think they're the worst kind of people. These guys. I was thinking about this the other day. It's the kind of people that, I mean, when we grow up and you wanna have a certain life and you're not getting it, you change yourself. You try doing better, you try improving your own situation, and then achieve your objectives. These are people that want to get it by having everything else change for them, not them making an effort, not them changing their own reality. They want reality to change for them. That is why you have these, as you were saying, these useful idiots, lazy people, stupid bastards that are just perfect for this left-wing movement.
Yeah, they're lazy and they're very brainwashed by whatever you want to call it, progressivism, liberalism, leftism, communism. I have relatives that have racked up, $100,000 in college and postgraduate debt.
Right.
And it was their choice. They were adults. They were not, 14-year-olds convinced to use a puberty blocker. They took this debt on when they're in their late teens or early 20s. And now they think it's unfair that they should have to pay it back because they were only 20 when they made this decision. And they want they want coal miners in West Virginia, in essence, to pay back their postgraduate debt. And they don't see any problem with that. And meantime, right in front of us, we're watching 100,000 or more illegals just walking across the border. No health check, no nothing. They're getting the free airplane voucher, not even a ticket. It's just a manila envelope that says, put this guy on the airplane. No ID, no nothing.
And they're sending them with buses to strategic locations. We were talking about this the other day. They're sending these folks in buses to small communities where they know they're going to be having an impact on the way they're going to be voting. They're going to be going after the locals. They're using these people. You have everything. You have drug dealers. You have honest, desperate people that have no choice in life, and they just start walking in a direction. There's little kids there as well. There's just these people that are basically used as pawns. This is so common in South America as well. Do they have COVID? Who cares? They're just going to be thrown in there and let it sort it out. At the same time, these kids are going to be getting an education and they're going to be getting teachers in those classrooms, while at the same time, kids in American schools, they're not taking classes because of COVID. So there's this double, triple.
Anybody watching this should be familiar with the names of these two professors from the early 60s, Cloward and Piven. And it's called the Cloward-Piven strategy, which was to just, starting with the fact in their way of looking at it, America is irredeemably evil, imperialist country, awful country, and we want to wreck it. It's like hijacking a super tanker and driving it full speed onto the rocks. That's what their goal is for America. Take America and not improve it, wreck it, sink it, scuttle it, blow it up. And then something better has to come because America is the worst thing in the world. So the Cloward-Piven strategy is overwhelm the system with welfare benefits. People that just, the stupider, the better. If the stupidest people have 20 kids each, that's the best thing. But that's hard to accomplish because even stupid people aren't likely to have more than a few kids. 5 or 6, all on welfare, low IQ, can't really ever perform any kind of value added job. We don't need more strawberry pickers. Okay.
Yeah.
And what are they bringing into the country now? At the rate of probably now 2 million a year are people who don't speak English, may not even speak Spanish. They may speak some, North African dialect or Indian dialect. And so they're going to require translators, dentists, doctors, bilingual educators. Every one of these is like a throwing a lead mine into a little pond and just blowing it up, because each one of these new kids is a huge burden on your local town. The federal government, once they drop these busloads off in your local town, the federal government, we're done. Good. Yeah. Catholic Charities, Lutheran Charities, thanks a lot. Paid you. Then they just drop these kids out. They show up at the health service saying, this kid's never seen a dentist. His teeth are all messed up. We got to start with the dental care, the health care. He's never had a vaccine. We need to teach him English. He's only got a 3rd grade education. If he's 20 years old. Yeah. This means every one of these illegal aliens needs 20 or 30 government workers just to work on them. Yeah. This is Cloward Piven to the nth degree. And it's meant to wreck our country. And people don't even know what the hell is going on.
Someone was saying here, are we sure we're talking about U.S. and not Argentina? Because it's the same thing that they do in places like Argentina. In Argentina, they've been without classes for like a year and a half now. And there's the more conservative right-wing mayor of the city of Buenos Aires. He wants to start classes. And the president, which is just a puppet of the commie mafia over there, they're just not allowing him to do that. He wants to start with classes, and they have like this action against him, banning him from doing so. Because the more ignorant you have people, the more stupid people are, the better it is for these commies. They just love the idea of having 2 years without classes, no education whatsoever, having the most idiotic population you could possibly think of, depending exclusively on the government.
They need government, and they make government is the answer for everything. And if they have to tax the middle class into extinction, that's great. Then the middle class also becomes poor and dependent on the government. That's why they're giving out the $2,000 and the $1,400. It's the beginning of Yang's universal basic income. Once people get used to getting these checks,
getting money,
why go back to work? Yeah, they're saying now that as stores and restaurants are reopening, the restaurant owners are saying nobody wants to work.
$13 an hour they were paying in a McDonald's. There's a guy in Florida paying $50 for someone to just show up to an interview, Matt, and he's not even getting that. Paying $13, 15. I think someone was going as high as 17 for flipping burgers, and they're not getting people. That is not just a problem of people not wanting to work. That's also a problem of inflation. Money is not worth a damn anymore.
Well, when you pay somebody, an EBT card is not just food stamps. We used to think of food stamps, a paper food stamp, like a coupon. EBT now contains all your government benefits. And many studies have been done where if you consider you don't have to pay for health insurance because you're just going to go to the local ER and they can't kick you out, right? You're not paying for your rent. The electricity is paid for by some other government program. Your child care is paid for. When you add all of these things together, it comes out to being something like more than $20 an hour if you had to pay for these yourself. Right. So why would you go to work for $13 an hour and bust your ass in a hot kitchen? Right. When you can stay home on the couch watching TV for the equivalent of $20 an hour.
Right.
As long as it lasts.
And the more you give this giving money away, this stupid thing of we're going to be giving everyone $1,000, we're going to be giving everyone $1,200. All of this, the only thing it does is destroy the value of that money, which is already valueless to begin with. It's just IOUs printed by the bankers. But the more you do this, the more people realize how stupid it is. and how inflation is creeping and destroying. They're hiding the numbers quite well, but inflation is quite obvious. People
Oh
are
yeah.
realizing it.
And some places it's showing first. Fernando Sosa says a 2x4 piece of lumber, like 8-foot 2x4, a year ago was $2.80. Now it's over $9
Right.
for the same piece of lumber. A $15 sheet of plywood is like $60.
Right.
So this is like an early symptom, but this is underneath. I compare this to a magma dome. Before the Mount Vesuvius explodes, before the ground starts moving up, the magma dome is building. That's what inflation is doing. At the
Yeah.
beginning of the Weimar Republic, when they were printing the Deutschmarks, the economy was great for a couple years, and people thought, wow, this new economic theory is
It's
fantastic.
working. Yeah.
It's working. But then the hyperinflation takes over. You can't stop it. It's like a magma dome building underneath of you till it blows up. So already gasoline is like, 50% higher, but things like lumber, which have to go through many steps. So the inflation gets tacked on in many levels. First you have fires, and there may be some less lumber, but each level of the processing of lumber, that inflation is kicking in. It has to be shipped using gasoline from one plant to another plant to finally the Home Depot. Well, this is going to be eventually everywhere, including, the cheap T-shirts and sneakers you're buying.
Yeah.
And when this happens, they will just keep increasing EBT. See, they won't have to print. You won't see wheelbarrows full of dollars like in 1930s Germany, 1920s Germany, because what they'll do is just keep loading EBT on your card.
Right.
So a government welfare peasant, serf, slave, whatever he is, he will be in the line at Walmart in front of you. You will be selling your extra shoes to make some money to buy food at Walmart because you don't have an EBT card. You are self-employed or you lost your job. You will be like picking fruit out of the dumpster to eat, and the guy on welfare will go to the Walmart in front of you because no matter what inflation happens, they will just add zeros onto his EBT card. And you can't tell me that's not going to have a massive social impact when people that are not on EBT are starving and government people on EBT are still in line at Walmart.
Yeah. No, it's something that we've seen in Argentina a lot of, and we know how bad it is. Inflation is terrible, man. In places like Venezuela, where it gets to a point where money has no value whatsoever, at least not the local currency. And in the case of the United States, I don't see people using like other currency. What is it you're going to be using? Using euros or you're going to be going what for silver? Someone mentioning Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin it's like $50,000 right now, and that just shows how little faith people have in the dollar. The fiat currency is falling apart, and people are realizing that. Someone was mentioning, is ammo going to be cheap again? No, Mr. Smith. No, it's not. Ammo is going to be getting more and more expensive. It's lead, it's brass, and gunpowder. It's not going to be getting cheap at all.
And it will be regulated too. You're going to have to prove your need. You're going to have to turn in your old ammunition. It's going to get harder and harder. And for reloaders, gunpowder will be considered like an explosive. You will need a special license to buy it, to buy reloading gunpowder. And and primers, especially primers.
Right. The Second Amendment says nothing about primers and gunpowder, so we're going to be regulating those.
Yeah, a couple minutes ago, Longshot said, I hope all the carpenters know how to reclaim lumber. This is really an important point. Up until really now, when people are building a new house on a property where there's an old house, they just get a huge backhoe and they just crush it, like just destroy it and pull it down and knock it in and throw it into big dumpsters and haul it away. And one day there goes an old wood house thrown in a big dumpster and hauled to the dump. Well, the lumber in that old house is going to be worth something. And sometimes the old lumber in the old house is actually way superior, if it's not rotted, if it's not like foundation wood that's, wet. But even a long time ago, they were taking apart these canneries out in California that were built along the seacoast to process fish into canned fish, and were made out of like redwood, like 10 inches by 10 inches beams that you can't even find anymore. So even an old house, the 50 or 100-year-old houses, they're not just going to crush them with a backhoe and throw them away. You'll pay people to go in there and crowbar them to pieces, for the lumber.
Yeah.
It will become this kind of reclamation will become a new business model.
Yeah. Yeah. People are so used to disposing of everything, and everything is like low quality. Everything is like crap that as soon as it breaks, there's no way of repairing it. Maybe that's one of the things that in places like in Cuba or even in Venezuela as well, they just learn to fix everything. Everything, you don't throw a washer away because it's not working anymore. You reclaim the little motor. You reclaim absolutely everything you can from it. This idea of just throwing it and buying a new one, when those prices keep going up, people will not have much of a choice there.
Yeah, and something even a long time ago, I knew a Colombian guy. We went to a junkyard to buy some stuff, and just a part for a car. And he was looking at all these cars stacked up in a American junkyard, and he said he couldn't believe it because in Colombia, they would find the same model of car. One is wrecked in the front and one is wrecked in the back, and they would cut that sucker in the middle and weld the two good halves together and have a new car. That they didn't just throw cars away because damage to like part of the car.
And they keep on. Cars just keep on going if you just take care of them. This idea of, this car is old, so we have to dispose of it. Look at it. In Cuba, they have cars that are from the 50s, still going around. They have maybe no parts left of the original thing, but you're going to be using your car for a lot more miles than you used to do.
Yeah, old Red said yet another reason to buy an old rural homestead is it's for the wood resource in the old building. So even if the building is like too obsolete to rejuvenate, sometimes the floors are sagging and the walls are not straight, and it's not to modern standards. But the lumber in it may be worth more than just throwing it away. I mean, you can take the lumber apart and build something new from it.
And you have like more space for more projects, for storing stuff. One of the things I like about the country type of lifestyle is you can have piles of stuff that you're not using, but somewhat protected. Years later, you may use it in some other project. If you don't have the room for that, it's not a possibility for you.
Exactly. But you have to get away from the big cities because this is going to be the suburbs of the big cities is going to be the flashpoint. And you're going to know that we have turned the corner when people aren't just confronting BLM, when people start saying, hey, if the police are going to let them continue and arrest the local residents, then we're going to have another solution for BLM. And it's not that means now we win and BLM disappears. It just means we're entering a new chapter, which will be leading into a civil conflict. And then China and the Russians are like, high-fiving each other and saying, when are we ready to attack Taiwan and Europe? Because America is completely out of the picture.
Yeah. And when we say BLM, it's a much larger structure than just that. That's maybe one of the spearhead movements, or at least in the public eye, it's made perceived like that. But this is so much deeper than just a couple of guys that one day decided to, oh yes, we're being persecuted by police because we're black. All of that is complete bullshit, as we know. It goes way deeper, and it's something that's been rotting society from the inside for a very long time. This didn't happen just in the last couple of years or so. This has been a disease. The idea of traditional family values being dated, and the idea of minorities having benefiting the single parent households, kids without, so you don't have a father, okay, then you get the money, then you get the cheese. There was this girl in, I think I mentioned it before, this girl in London. So this was happening in UK, and she was living in the streets because she said, because I'm not a drug addict, so I don't fit into the drug addict program, and I'm not pregnant because I'm neither one of those things. So she was living in the street. Had she been a drug addict or had she been pregnant, she would have been given a house to live in, Couple years later, they find the same girl. She's now pregnant, and she now has a place to stay in. So this is all done on purpose. The idea that a woman should not stay home raising the kids barefoot and pregnant, this idea that's old-fashioned.
Yeah, people, and we mention it a lot, but people need to go back and study three formative branches of communism. Modern communism was in Germany, the Frankfurt School, Antonio Gramsci in Italy, and the Fabian Society in England. But in particular, the Frankfurt School, they came up with what they called critical theory. And it's just because you can't say new neo-communist theory.
Right.
It would have been more honest to say neo-communist theory. So Lenin took over the Soviet Union, but it didn't sweep across Europe. So they scratched their heads and said, well, why is that? It's because the Europeans and the Americans still love their religion, their family, and their country. So you have to erode that love. You have to take away the family, the religion, and the patriotism. Wreck them, and then these countries will be like a rotten tree that will just collapse, and then communism will be ready. So in some countries that are all one race, they would focus on class warfare. For example, in Italy, everybody was an Italian. Okay, there's a North Italian or a South Italian. Yeah. They're all speaking the same language. They're all Italians. So then you look at, okay, there's the landowners of that class and the peasants that are working for the landowner. So you focus on the class struggle part of critical theory. In America, with upward mobility and ability for people that work hard to make money, they focused on race, critical race theory. And all it is a way to crowbar apart our society so that it will no longer love itself or feel worth defending. So you raise a generation of people that say, America sucks, why should I fight for it? And they're actually going to be out in the street waving hammer and sickles. You're seeing that more and more. You're seeing it in graffiti. Hammer and sickle graffiti.
It is considered socially acceptable right now to be a communist. Man, there's this, I don't know if you follow mixed martial arts or not, but there's this woman, this chick, Rose Namajunas. I did a video about her. So she's a female fighter. She's actually quite good. She's actually has superior dexterity for a woman. She's very, very good at it. And she's going to be fighting this Chinese woman for the world title. The Chinese fighter is on steroids. I mean, she has a build of like a little miner. so she's going to be fighting
she's a
this
beast.
Yeah, she's fighting this hormone-induced lab freak, and she mentioned something that robbed the mainstream media very. She said, "Better dead than red," because her family comes from Lithuania, and because of her Lithuanian background, she said, "I know what happened to my family, my heritage. I know what my people from the old country went through and why they moved to the United States, because they were persecuted, they were slaughtered. Communists were slaughtering people in Lithuania. So that's why I say that, because I don't believe that the communism is something that has the same values as I have as an American, or even as a person of Lithuanian origin that suffered this in the flesh. No, they were going after this woman as she has said, the most horrible thing in the world. Do you understand why they were criticizing you by saying better dead than red? I mean, she had to defend something that should make perfect sense to anyone that understands what communism is about.
And anybody that has gone to a university, I don't think I'm stepping on too many toes to say that the education schools are not quite as rigorous as like engineering, if I can say. Teaching math to second graders is easier than learning high level calculus, and the people who become teachers as a career are not the same as our rocket scientists, our rocket engineers. They're easily manipulated. And a lot of the focus of critical theory over the last really more than 50 years has been on taking over American education unions. So now, even with COVID waning in the progressive states, the teachers are refusing to go back in the classroom. They keep changing the goalposts, as we say. Now they're saying, well, every school needs a complete new HVAC system. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for telling us that now. So you're going to reset the clock now for like another year? No teaching? So I would say that among the teachers unions, the ones that support staying away from the classroom, away from in-person teaching, 90% are useful idiots.
Yeah.
And the
Or
rest
commies.
are knowing
Like
commies.
the guy from California, the representative of the teachers union, he was saying that he refuses to go back to classroom while taking his own kids to a
That's
private
right.
school.
That's
So
right.
the double standard is disgusting with these people.
I saw this go by. I wanted to thank David Bustillos for the coffee.
Yeah.
Thanks for the super chat.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, everybody by now should be completely clued in that this is a plan. This is a program. Like Michael Yan says, if you keep being surprised, your paradigm is obsolete. And you need to come up with a paradigm that explains what you are consistently seeing so that you don't keep being surprised. You have to come up with a paradigm, and a paradigm that works is this is a plan. This is deliberate. This is organized. And now BLM, most of them are useful idiots. They think, well, we're fighting for social justice.
Yeah.
But they're just useful idiots. They're cannon fodder. They're being used to instigate and kick off the civil war when people in the suburbs say, one time coming through my neighborhood with bullhorns and lights is enough. Second time you come through, they're carrying people away.
There's
and
so
that
many
is going
of
to
those,
happen.
though. There's so many stupid people that still think this is about racism and police being racist and white supremacy. There's so many idiots out there. It's scary how stupid people
idiots
can
for
be.
sure. And Libertadores said public schools are indoctrination camps. Yes, and you know how stupid they are? In the same schools, the Catholic and parochial and private schools has been open since last September for in-class teaching. So they have such a cognitive dissonance going on that they can say, oh, it's just too dangerous for in-class teaching. Yeah, but the quarter of the students that are in private schools, they didn't miss a year.
Yeah.
Their kids just jumped a year ahead. They didn't waste a year of important. Grade school is important. You can't just when you're 10 years old, you just can't take a year off. This is crippling compared to your peer cohorts that you're competing with. They didn't take a year off in China. The Catholic kids didn't take a year off. They went ahead.
This creates that difference. There's going to be the poor, stupid kid that was in the public school that didn't take a class all year, and there's going to be the commie sending his kid to the expensive private school like this bastard was doing, while keeping schools shut for the peasants. He's sending his own kids to a school that's open, and he doesn't see a problem with that with his own kids. It is. This is also typical of the kind of thing you see in South America and in Argentina, where they destroy anything that is public. It's complete crap. You're going to be depending on the private sector as to get your kids any kind of education.
Yeah, and Tunnel Rabbit says 25 countries are developing cryptocurrency, and probably China will be. China is going to come out with a digital yuan, but a lot of people believe that it's just a matter of time. When you say that the blockchain is uncrackable, is not decipherable, this is maybe true now, but it doesn't necessarily become true forever. When a calculation that takes 25 weeks today could take 25 minutes in 2 or 3 years. Computing power can increase even faster than blockchain. So
I would focus. I mean, I trust Bitcoin quite a bit, but anything that is new and anything that's anything that's being controlled by China or or Facebook or any of these. The idea of a singularity moment in computer technology where you could crack the blockchain. In theory, I guess it could be possible. it's super unlikely. As of right now, you would need the entire processing power of pretty much the entire planet to crack it. So is that likely? I don't think it's likely to change at all. But I would definitely stick with something reliable and not trust it entirely as your one and only way of storing any your form of wealth. Mixing it up with precious metals, with real estate, buying. There was this guy. He was saying buying farmland and food producing land with water. That's going to be critical.
Definitely. And water is a key. If you have to use a lot of fuel to pump water from deep underground, the water has to be accessible, not just something that you mine by putting energy into the ground to get the water out. That becomes chasing the dog chasing its own tail, where pretty soon, as fuel gets more expensive and unavailable, the water's not available. I'm lucky in North Florida. Water is. I have a hand pump well.
That's awesome.
Drinking water comes out of a hand pump. As long with city water. Yeah. AI will crack blockchain at some point. That's a debate. Yeah. The other problem I see with crypto is the government can at some point, just like FDR with gold, say crypto is only used by terrorists and mafia and tax avoiders. And you can't use it anymore because it's helping terrorism. They just come out with some bullshit like that. Crypto is for terrorists. Are you a terrorist? You have 1 week to convert your crypto to good old American dollars.
The thing about that, I've also thought about, yes, even if they cannot take it away from you, they can just, like they did with gold, they just ban it and you have to show up and surrender it. The thing about that is that there's a lot of banks, investment funds, some of these big players that have bought into it themselves. So maybe it's not even in their best interest. I think that right now they're chasing their own tail with this idea of we're going to be printing money so as to dig ourselves out of this hole.
No, that never works. It never works. But the government will, just like with gold, they will say, we're going to ban crypto. Then people will say, well, I'll just go to Argentina and I'll set up an account in Argentina with my crypto. You'll have to physically go there, because if you send somebody an email saying, hey, I will give you my crypto key, the key for my crypto in return for this and that will be a felony right there. That will be a 10-year felony, period. To even talk to somebody in Argentina about transferring your crypto key to them, that will be a felony. Guaranteed.
I see it like something that you could store, and let's say you one day decide to, wherever it is that you are, because there's lots of people like in Venezuela, they use crypto as well. Man, it's one of those things that when you're escaping a dictatorship, you take it away with you. To see the day in which you're asked to give up your cryptocurrency as if it was some kind of contraband or illegal.
If it's challenging the dollar, if crypto becomes a parallel economy to the dollar,
it's worth $50,000 already.
When a new currency becomes a challenge to the old currency, the government tends to ban the new currency, because if you have a store where a can of soup is now $10,000 paid for with digital dollars, and the store owner has on the side, I can also sell it to you for crypto or for gold. They'll make that illegal. You have to only use the dollar. Otherwise, pretty soon the store will say, screw the dollar, we don't even want it.
Well, in Venezuela, people are telling me they're mostly using, it's a dollarized economy. They use dollars in Venezuela because the local currency is absolutely worthless. An average worker in Venezuela makes enough money to buy a single tin of tuna. That's your monthly income, $3 or $4. How can you survive on that?
Well,
the entire economy is parallel.
A good lesson from the French Revolution is they didn't have obviously a way to make digital money, but they started printing what they call assignats. I'm sure it's not pronounced that way in French, but in English it looks like ASS assignat. This was a paper currency, like a paper franc. And of course, they could print as much of it as they wanted. So soon farmers wouldn't take it because it was hyperinflated. Well, the farmers would still trade for silver coin. Well, the French government said, if we catch you with a silver coin, we're going to cut your head off. Okay? You have to use the assignat. And if they would send a spy out to the farms, they would send a guy out to the farms pretending to be like an honest grain dealer saying, hey, you know, I got some assignats, but I could buy this for silver also. If the farmer says yes, guillotine time.
Look, there's Maria Jose Ravales here. She says, yes, in Venezuela, we use crypto a lot. Haha. I know you do, guys. I know you use it. That's why I'm mentioning it, because people just try to get by. I mean, like you're saying, they're going to be banning gold. They're going to be banning silver. And if they catch you, they cut your head off. But France had gold coins until like 1980s. I have some myself here. Some of those old Hercules francs, those are 90% silver. So they kept on using it.
Oh, it came back in with Napoleon, but in the 1790s, during the French Revolution, it was a death sentence to be found with it.
Yeah.
Because you could only buy, especially food, because the cities were not getting any food because the farmers were saying, why am I going to grow a crop and be paid with worthless assignats? By the time I get ready to use the assignats to buy my next seeds or my next supplies, they've just devalued 90%.
Yeah.
So I'm only going to trade in coin. Well, during those 10 years, trading in coin was a death penalty.
Right.
And America, believe me, we have law enforcement fanaticism in this country, and we have computers and spies, and a lot of things are because of multi-party risk. One guy can't commit a crime on his own without involving 4 or 5 other people in the transaction. At the bank and at the real estate agency, all of these people who have knowledge of a deal being done in crypto, they'll be watching the billboard and seeing the commercial on TV. If you're dealing in crypto, you'd better call the IRS because otherwise you're going to spend 10 years in jail. You're not going to be willing to take that chance. You're going to turn in all of your records. They'll have all your bank records digitally. The computer will just suck it all in, and then they'll find those guys that are still trading in illegal Bitcoin or gold or silver. Because when they ruin a currency, when they ruin the dollar or the French franc or the German mark, they make it illegal to use anything else. It's a desperation measure. It never works, but they do it.
They banned gold in the United States. What year was it that you had to turn in your gold?
33.
Is there any stat as of how many people actually turned their gold in and how many just hid it? Is there any numbers of?
Not many turned it in, but it became you couldn't use it in a transaction because it would be a crime. You couldn't go out and buy a farm for gold because it could be a crime. And it would be even easier today because these transactions that are digital leave an electronic trail all over the place. One farmer could literally take a box full of gold and buy a farm with a handshake, and nobody else knows. But now every record is electronic. You have to file all of these things electronically, and somebody is lying. If you say that the farmer sold it to me for $1, but they're showing somewhere else, oh, look at this Bitcoin transaction that the email chain went to Argentina, but we know that it was this farmer and this farmer. And they did an illegal Bitcoin transaction, 10 years in jail. I'm just saying, be prepared for this. That's all. Be prepared for it.
It is scary to think that it would come down to that. But at this point, I think anything is 1933. Okay, so with the gold thing, I read some of those ads, I guess, that they had those in like magazines and newspaper. Turn in your gold. What were you allowed to keep? Were you allowed to keep like jewelry, something like that, or was it all?
Well, and also numismatic coins. You could coins that the value was the collectability. But if you went to for this time in the 1930s, if you went to your safe deposit box, you had to call the IRS and have an IRS agent there when you opened your safe deposit box, which is where a lot of wealthy people kept this stuff.
Yeah.
And you couldn't open it without a government agent standing there by you. Now the government agent doesn't go with you to the bank. he's just he's watching your computer. And are you really trusting that, oh, I have a VPN, I'm using Proton Mail, the IRS can't catch me? You want to take that chance?
Yeah, yeah, man, it's pretty concerning. I think that the best strategy is having that, in different baskets, and having as much options as possible. That's
And food,
always a good
always
idea.
food,
Yeah,
always food, and land, and especially land that is making food. Because a big problem that I see is we may have more ammunition than food.
yeah,
And I don't even like thinking about what happens when the food runs out before the bullets run out.
yeah,
It gets ugly, very ugly. So like I've been growing fruit trees and learning how to make cuttings off of other plants, because in the small land that I have, instead of tilling the ground to make carrots or potatoes, it's better to plant fruit trees. I
raised
mean,
beds, that sort of thing.
you can do raised beds also, and barrels. You can grow in barrels. But I'm getting to be pretty good at growing fruit trees and making cuttings, so that you cut a little piece off and put it in the dirt. Little
Yeah,
magic is involved, and a new fruit tree is growing.
yeah,
Instead of starting from a seed, you're starting from a cutting. And if your neighborhood suddenly is like an orchard with apples and olives and oranges, that goes a long way to prevent starvation.
yeah.
And in the American South, sweet potatoes, for the amount of room that they require, just a small amount of land put into sweet potatoes, which are very easy to grow in the South, can feed like an enormous amount of people.
Yeah.
Sweet
All of
potatoes are
Ireland.
well, no, the red sweet potato,
Yeah.
not the Irish potato,
Yeah,
which
but I
is
mean
more
that.
of a. But
Yeah, go ahead.
potatoes are growing more in America, in the northern, more temperate, cooler climate. But in the hotter South, the sweet potato grows like crazy and can keep people alive when nothing else is growing.
It's I think it's better nutritionally that the sweet potato is actually better, right? Or it has probably more calories because it's actually sweeter in taste.
I'm not sure, but I mean, I know that during the Great Depression, a lot of the South, and during the American Civil War, the South didn't starve because it was fertile.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the horses and the cattle would grow just because the grass was growing.
That's another
And
thing, man. There's a lot of people, Matt, that have this idea that what they are doing right now is what they're going to be able to do when things go to hell. And I've always had this problem with that, because I know that's actually not correct. So many people trust that they're going to be making out in these, especially in the northern regions with very cold climates. They're depending a lot on chainsaws, on gasolines, on parts. If you have to worry about not freezing to death, that's a huge survival challenge. And if that is being solved by access to things that will no longer be there in the future, then your plan is misguided, to say the least.
right. And now, if you live in Montana surrounded by forests, you can
Yeah, sure.
you can heat off of firewood. But if you're living in Chicago in a high-rise building,
Yeah.
it's a disaster, because once the power goes off to that building, it's done. When the Soviet Union collapsed, there's some paradoxical things. We Americans, maybe it's a lot of hubris involved, thinking, oh, we're so much better than the Russians. One of the effects of the Russians being in a centrally planned economy, their buildings, usually you didn't pay for heat. The building's heat was steam.
Yeah.
And it was kind of ugly, because like on an American military base, you often see the big steam pipes above ground surrounded with insulation. So you can have like a central power plant that also has boilers, and it's sending steam into all of these buildings. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, as long as they could keep that steam plant going, like somebody's figuring out how to get another barge of coal or whatever it burns on,
You didn't
as long
freeze
as
to
that
death.
steam, then the people didn't freeze to death in those Russian cities.
Correct.
In an American context, every single apartment in that building in Chicago has a different electric meter. And
Look at
if
what
you don't
happened in
pay,
Texas. What happened in Texas
yeah.
when they lost power forever? In Texas, we're not even talking about further north.
But you can wait in Texas. You're going to wait, and they're going to be warm again. But if you're in Chicago, you won't survive from
Yeah,
December to March.
yeah,
You will be frozen. They learned that in the Balkan War, when it was cold, people were in apartment buildings were like taking apart their doors and making little
yeah.
fires inside.
Burning anything. Yeah,
Just every tree in the city is cut down for firewood. Every
yeah.
single tree.
They
And
dug up the coffins, Matt. They dug up the coffins to burn them.
that's
Imagine how
harsh.
bad. Imagine
That
how
is
bad
harsh.
things can be to end up doing that.
Yeah, Tunnel Rabbit had a good point about chickens. That the chickens, besides making eggs and meat and fertilizer, okay,
Yeah,
they also I only saw this in old survivalist prepper type magazines way long ago. But there's even a way to take the chicken droppings, put them into a tank so that it off gases, collect the gas, and run machinery on it.
hmm.
And I'm not saying like this is going to be the replacement for an 18-wheeler to drive 1,000
Yeah,
miles, but
yeah,
it can be a way to convert your tractor. Because let's face it, a tractor can do more work than a guy walking behind a mule.
hmm.
And if you can convert your tractor to a multi-fuel running off of the gas from chickens, you need a big container for it, right? But I mean, I'm talking about when there's no more propane, there's no more butane, nothing. A chicken, you can collect your own gas that will run an engine. Like say for a machine shop,
Yeah.
you want to make machine gun, you want to make machine parts, and you need electricity. Well, there aren't that many ways to make electricity that can run machinery. Solar panel takes a lot of solar panels to
Yeah.
get that kind of high energy output. But even a chicken farm right now, that the fertilizer is just used as fertilizer, but it can be also used to make enough gas to run machinery.
Yeah.
Something to think. Yeah, it smells like chicken. I mean,
Yeah, but it's a good little animal to have. If you have the it used to be that, especially the old immigrants in Argentina, the Spanish and the Italians. Every single one of them, as soon as they got to Argentina, they bought a little piece of land, and even in the city, they had like in the backyard, they had a little orchard, and they have a few chickens over there because it was like the most typical thing to do. If you had a yard, it wasn't for flowers. It was actually to have something that produced something you could actually eat. So even in small, small gardens, they would have chickens.
yeah, I'm doing pretty well with olive trees.
Mm,
And olives, besides eating them very healthy, the Mediterranean
yeah,
diet, it's a cooking oil also. And to make olives into cooking oil is just a press.
yeah,
You
cold
squeeze
press.
the olives and olive oil comes out, and you can cook with that, and it's a very good cooking oil.
Yeah,
And because we've always just gone to the store and bought olive oil imported from, Italy or somewhere, nobody ever really thought much. I wonder if olives grow here. Olives grow great in North Florida. They went through the winter fine. They're growing like crazy.
that's
It
good.
takes a while to make fruit. This is the problem. Start now because you don't grow a fruit tree and get fruit the first year.
The wood is also very good. The olive wood is hard as nails. It's super tough stuff.
And they last forever. The trees will
Mm.
outlive you for
Yeah,
sure, and your
there's
grandchildren,
there's some of them that are hundreds of years old. Some of the older olive trees.
and still productive.
Yeah,
Yep. Every facet of farming requires diesel. That's right. And
yeah,
Mr. Smith said, and an important factor about diesel is that it will still work for at least 5 to 7 years.
yeah. Best
And
storage.
gasoline will be, useless in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
So if you have a choice of buying a diesel truck or vehicle along with your farm machinery,
hmm.
get a diesel vehicle, because
Yeah.
just like you can't plan on the supermarket always having the food, you can't plan on the gas station having fresh gasoline.
I love
So
diesel. Diesel is great, man. It has so many advantages. First, it's gonna be lasting more. It's usually cheaper diesel than gasoline. It has more torque. A diesel engine will have almost like twice as much torque in your 4x4 than gasoline. So, for example, my little Honda, it just has the torque power of a big truck because it runs on diesel. Stored properly in a metal container with no air left, because if not, it starts oxidizing. But with a minimal amount of air left, it's going to be lasting for many years.
And
It's not going to be burning like
and
gasoline.
if you do have a farm or even a small property, you can put a tank on it that's fairly, low
Yeah, large.
profile and inexpensive. Nobody needs to know that every time you're going to buy diesel, you're putting another 10 gallons into a big tank.
Yeah,
Nobody will ever notice it. So it's stealthy, like having solar panels. A big diesel tank will be extremely valuable. The last person that's running machinery will have a big advantage over people that aren't,
yeah,
in terms of productivity, of using the land, having machines that, like a machine shop that can still run. It's a huge advantage.
yeah. Diesel red. Farm diesel is red. Yeah, it comes with that tint because I don't know if it's true. They use it to see if your car is running on the red stuff
It's
because
for
of
tax purposes.
right.
It's just for tax purposes to see where you bought it.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if you can use it because it could be if you have clean, you could use it in like in a kerosene heater, but I guess it leaves like more fumes, more of
Yeah.
the nasty smell. So
Yeah,
maybe for that.
I know that for putting a new engine in an old sailboat, it's a problem now because the diesel engines that were produced and sold legally 10 or even 20 years ago, now they can't be sold because they're not they pollute too much compared to, it's too expensive and too bulky to
Mm.
try to sell diesel engines for sailboats that meet all the environmental requirements. So it's hard to re-engine an old boat with a new diesel because they're not going to fit. They're too much of it is put into the pollution.
What happens if you bring it from like another country? You bought your sailboat in somewhere else, and you're going to
Or you
stay.
can have the work done in another country. You can
Mm.
just do it, have it done in the Caribbean somewhere. They don't care about that stuff.
Okay. Olive oil stored in freezer will last more than 6 years. Okay, you know that. That's a good tip. Thanks.
So
Freezing
will
oil.
it freeze? Tunnel rabbit. Will the olive oil freeze, or will it just like be sluggish like syrup?
Hmm. Yeah, it's worth maybe trying it out. I guess it would freeze, right? Wouldn't it freeze solid? Maybe that's what he means by it. It makes sense. I mean, if it's frozen, then it's not gonna be going rancid like it would normally go.
But if you have
Yeah,
olive trees, you don't need to store it as much
right.
as use it because
Yeah,
next year you're going to press more olives and have more olive oil.
yeah. You can just
And eating,
sell it.
like somebody mentioned their avocado tree. There are some fruits that are just amazingly healthy.
Yeah,
And this was the way human beings were meant to eat, in
yeah,
season, eating a bunch of avocados, a bunch of apples, citrus, you know, anything, all of the fruit is good for you.
yeah.
And when it's growing, you can just eat till you're,
My
can't eat anymore.
my 2 year old, he gets in his little plate a bunch of olive oil, and he goes with a piece of bread and just
That's it.
spreads it and
And
eats
some herbs
yeah, he's
and
not even that. He just eats olive oil and bread like a little maniac.
instead it's much healthier than butter
Yeah,
or
yeah,
margarine. Yeah, it's way
yeah.
healthier. But I'm still waiting for my olive trees to make any olives. It's
It's taking a while.
yeah. There's an old saying: the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago,
Yeah,
and
that's so
and
true.
the second best time is today. But
Yeah,
it's going to be a while.
yeah. Or buy a chunk of land with some trees already growing in it. That's also a way to go if you can. But as soon as you start, that's yes,
But
that's definitely.
fruit trees are a great vote in the future. Fruit trees are a symbol of civilization because
Yeah.
there's a saying that in the Mediterranean there was a saying that you grow an olive tree for your grandchildren. So it's not like a instant gratification deal like
Yeah.
going to the store and buying a sack of olives. You have to plant the tree and wait for years.
Mm.
But then it's going to be going forever. And one of the things during wars in the Mediterranean, if an enemy was sweeping through, they would just cut all the fruit trees, which is like a real
Yeah.
barbaric act. It's like an act of civilizational vandalism like poisoning a well. You may be living there. Maybe the war is over and your child is going to marry the child of the former
20,
enemy,
20
but you
years
cut
from
all
now.
the trees down. But you cut all the olive trees down. Don't do it. Leave the
jerk
damn
move.
trees alone. Fruit trees should be hands off. I don't care what enemy you're fighting. Fruit trees should be out of bounds.
Left as is. Okay. A lot of store-bought veggies are sterilized, so they can't be used as seed.
That's a fact.
A lot of the stuff you buy on stores is just barely better than poison. It's pretty crappy.
I sometimes get farm eggs, actual farm eggs, and I was told by a farmer the eggs that we buy at the supermarket are irradiated.
Yeah.
So that they last longer.
Yeah.
And the fresh eggs from the supermarket are usually about 2 months old. And the eggs you buy from the farmer, you can tell they're way better. They're way better.
Well, and there's a little trick that is actually quite cool for eggs. If you paint an egg with mineral oil, apparently it lasts like twice as much than the unpainted egg. So getting a good amount of mineral oil for preserving your eggs, that's something.
Yeah, and for a sailor, for tricks for preserving eggs on a long voyage, is to rub Vaseline on them, which I guess is similar to the mineral oil, and also to turn the boxes, so that the air bubble is not at the same place. So you turn it so that it doesn't go bad through the dry section of the egg.
Right, correct.
So somebody asked, what state am I from? And I was originally from Maryland, but now I live in Florida. Jorge Maturana.
Don't wash it. Yes, that's also true. Don't wash the egg. That's going to be making it go bad faster. Has natural stuff on it.
Yeah, the real eggs, but I know from people that raise eggs around here, the hawks are always looking for your chickens. So you got to protect your chickens because the hawks love them too.
Yeah, easy prey. Okay, man. I think we already did almost. We're getting close to a couple hours. We usually do.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Anything you'd like to mention before we go?
I think we're in for a rough time because a country that a former superpower that's descending into clown world, where the military is turning against its own people, and you have to wonder if they really are against communist China taking over Asia. Maybe they're kind of winking at China, like, go ahead, we don't care. So you see our own tech companies are turning almost communist as it is.
Yeah.
They're the airlines, Coca-Cola, Major League Baseball, they're happy to do deals with communist China while they insult us and say that identification for voting is racist.
Yeah.
So I think that the people leading this country, they're kind of leaning communist themselves. So I think we're in for a rough period. And when these riots break out, just remember it's planned. Don't think, wow, it's just something that happened. No, it's happening because people want it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Hey, guys, for those that are new to the channel, I know some of you guys in the Spanish channel, Matt is actually a great author. He has a lot of great books. He has a series, Domestic Enemies, Foreign and Domestic. Get Matt's books.
That's right.
I have the red one here, and there's also the Bracken collection, which is... you just have to. It's fantastic reading for those of you that still don't know about it. The link for Matt's website is going to be there below. Buy the books directly from him, from his website.
You can get them on Kindle and Audible also, but then at some point they might disappear from the ether. And if you haven't got this book of Fernando's,
thank you very much, Matt. Yes.
But this book, after you read it and absorb all the lessons from it, then you need your children and their friends to read it, because we grew up, I knew half of this stuff by being my age and growing up in an old era. But a lot of young people today, millennials, they don't have any of these street skills. This is like a new language for them. And you can save them a lot of heartache by giving them this like booster shot of street survival skills straight from the book. And I can't recommend it enough. but you
Matt,
need to buy it and give it to your children.
are your books in Spanish? That's something we talked about. You have to do something for just to put it in Spanish. There's a lot of interest in that.
Yeah, translating my novels, it would take too long. It's just too much
Yeah.
of an effort. And I don't want to do that. I'm not even writing another book, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're not looking to write it something else more.
No, all my books were warnings. Now we're in it. So what am I going to write about? Like, The Road by Cormac McCarthy,
Something depressing that you want to kill yourself.
Yeah, I have to start with Cormac McCarthy's The Road and do something worse. I think I'll skip that. I think I'll skip that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see some crazy stuff with the Chauvin trial and the kid named Adam Toledo and all of the Duane Wright.
What about the Kenosha kid? When is he being trial for it?
I think it's pushed off till the fall, but he's out. He's on bail. He's on bail. I think he should get himself a 30-footer and go.
Yeah, he should be leaving, man. If I was him, I would be out of there like crazy. I wouldn't wait until these bastards put him in trial because they're not going to be giving him a fair shake.
Yeah. That's a fact. It's Lynch law now, just the other way. So John Moore on RBN wants to interview you on his radio show. I don't know who John Moore is or what RBN is, but
you can contact. What's the best way to contact you, Matt, for people that for interviews and that sort of thing?
I have an email that can be found if people are searching around.
Yeah, just follow the links below. You will find the links below, or if not, I'll put them right now after this. I'll put them again in the comments and pin it so as to have it there. But if you look in the description of the video, you'll find Matt's website there.
And I have a post office box where I people send just physical checks. They even send like dollars wrapped in aluminum foil very often. So I have a PO box that's available on my website, and people can buy my books straight from me and cut Amazon out of the and if you get them from me, I can inscribe them. But and I thank the people that have sent me stuff to my PO box. I don't have it on hand at the moment, but somebody made me an unbelievable gunpowder horn.
Right.
Somebody might actually hand it to me off of camera. I need to show you. I meant to bring this in here and show what somebody made for me. I can't. This is really. I mean, I get sent T-shirts, and I get sent. Somebody sent me a fantastic knife, a custom knife. But check this out. I think it's gonna arrive in my hands.
In your hand by magic.
Look at this. Check this out.
That's nice, man. Yeah, that's good.
So it's all period stuff like brass and leather. It's
so nice.
It's Grimshawed. It's hard to focus on this stuff, but look.
Yeah, there I see it.
Look.
Oh, man, that's nice. Nice boat. Yeah.
And I tried it. Look at this.
So cool.
This is from a guy living out in one of those Western free states where it's like 1,000-yard shot in all directions. I looked on Google Earth. It's like, don't worry about this guy. If he goes up on top of a building, it's a 2,000-yard shot in every direction.
Nice.
Look at that. This is the real thing. And it's I looked up because it might come to these days again. Gunpowder is something clever people can make. You don't need like high-tech factory. They were making it, hundreds of years ago. But it's cool watching a flintlock being loaded from one of these because you just can't randomly pour it down. You have another little measurer, like a little piece of horn that's got the exact measure. So you're pouring from this into that and that into the barrel and ramming it. But that would keep it wet. I mean, keep it from getting wet, no matter what. Some of them have a little hinge on the bottom for like filling. This is watertight on the bottom, and so you'd have to use a funnel.
Yeah, fill it up over there.
And use a funnel to fill it. But look at the workmanship in this. Isn't that amazing? This is from Williston, North Dakota. Yes, thank you, Michael F. And I promise you that this is in a place of high honor on my shelf where I can see it all the time. Isn't that amazing?
It's
Look at
great.
that
It's great.
scrimshaw all over it.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work. Someone that really took a lot of time.
that is pride and workmanship right there. And I love it. I might get a kit flintlock because I like the idea of
A revolver, like a
cap and ball.
yeah, right, cap and
Yeah.
ball revolver. That's a nice gun for the fence as well.
But the actual flintlock, because even by the middle of the 19th century, they were making percussion caps.
Correct.
But before a percussion cap, for hundreds of years, it was you have to
Flint.
make a flame and make your own gun. Well, gunpowder was pretty hard to make, but you could get it. You had
Yeah.
Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. They would buy a little barrel of gunpowder, and it would be like for the next year. All their hunting. I mean, those guys were very tough people. They would go into the woods with just a muzzle loader and a knife and a dog, and that's it.
Making sure it
Indians,
doesn't get
bears,
wet,
everything.
keeping it dry.
That's right. They were tough men. I don't know if we've still got that toughness, but those pioneers, they were tough. Imagine you don't know who's out there. Indians, bears, everything. You've got a one-shot muzzle loader and a knife and a dog.
Good luck with that.
And you make your own clothes. You make your own clothes. They were great people. I wonder if
Have you seen the Remnant, that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Remnant? Have you seen
Yeah,
that
Revenant.
one?
Yes.
Revenant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
The
a
Revenant.
good one. Revenant.
Yeah.
There is.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Yep. All right. Well,
Okay, guys.
I'm not sure what next week's schedule looks like. We should be back on the regular channel
we're
in
gonna
English.
we're gonna be back in our old channel, but I mean, it was nice doing it here as well. Anyone that wants to follow us, guys, it's gonna be in my English channel, but at least we were able to do it this time. And a lot of people that maybe didn't know about it, because sometimes it works like that. Some folks in the Spanish channel didn't know that we do this, but we do it every weekend, or at least we try to do it when we can. Sometimes it's not possible, but it's gonna be in my English channel, okay, for next time.
Yeah, sometimes on Saturday, but usually on Sunday.
Perfect.
But we'll try to do it next week on the other channel, Modern
Correct.
Survivalist.
Fantastic. Guys, bye. Thanks, Matt, as always, and we'll talk next time, okay? Going offline right now. Bye, guys.